Hey everybody, welcome to another phrasal verb episode. I hope that you've enjoyed these phrasal verb episodes so far, and I hope you like this method. I hope you like learning phrasal verbs naturally through listening practice, really, because that's what these episodes are. These are just other episodes for listening, but with a focus on these particular phrasal verbs. And of course, you have the transcript to help you with understanding everything that I say in case you need that. Remember that that is available. The link is in the description below each of these episodes. So I hope that you've enjoyed these episodes so far. And today, we're going to look at the phrasal verbs answer to and appeal to. So let me define these phrasal verbs first. So what does answer to mean? This means to take orders from someone and to explain your actions to them. So for example, when you have your own business, you don't need to answer to anyone. This means that when you have your own business, you don't need to report to some boss and take orders from him and tell him everything you're doing and explain what you're doing. You don't have to do that. You don't answer to anyone. So that's answer to. How about appeal to? This means to be interesting or attractive to someone. So when something appeals to you, basically this means that you like it. It is interesting to you, it is attractive to you, you like that thing. So, for example, I could say, the idea of growing my own food has always appealed to me. This means that the idea of growing my own food, having a garden or a farm and growing my food and eating it, I've always liked this idea. This idea has always sounded interesting or attractive to me. It has always appealed to me. So that's appealed to. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about another topic, and I'm going to use these two phrasal verbs a lot. So you'll hear them repeated over and over, and by the end, hopefully, you'll have a very clear idea of how to use these phrasal verbs and what they mean. So let me talk about some of the differences between being an employee, being a freelancer, and being an entrepreneur. So each of these three things appeals to different people. Being an employee appeals to some people. Being a freelancer appeals to other people. And being an entrepreneur appeals to another group of people. So what are the differences that might appeal to some people or not appeal to some people? Well, I think one of the biggest reasons why people decide to become freelancers or entrepreneurs is because in those cases, you don't need to answer to a boss. So if you're a freelancer or you're an entrepreneur, there's no one that is in charge of you, so to say. So you don't answer to someone. You don't have to show your boss that you're doing all your work, and you don't have to take orders from a boss who is above you in your company. You're your own boss, so to say. So you don't take orders and you don't answer to a manager or a boss. So that's the case for freelancers and entrepreneurs. Of course, if you are a freelancer, you still answer to someone because you have clients that you work for directly. So you kind of need to answer to them in the sense that you do have to show them your work, and they might tell you that they're not happy with it and that you need to redo it. And that might not appeal to some people. For some people, they don't want to answer to a client and have the client become their boss, so to say. And I know that it can feel like that sometimes. You switch from being a salaried employee to being a freelancer. Now you're independent, but now instead of answering to a boss, you're answering to a client or a customer. So that still exists, that action of answering to someone. And even for entrepreneurs, it might still feel like you're answering to someone in the sense that you have your customers, the people that buy your product or your service. And of course, you kind of have to answer to them in the sense that if they're not happy with the product and you need to give them a refund, or they're not interested in your product, the market isn't interested in your service, so you need to change your service or your product and do something else. That's not the same as answering to a boss or answering to a client directly, but it can kind of feel like you still have to follow the orders of the market, so to say. But of course, that's different. That's not actually answering to some authority, right? So for some people, they might not want to be a freelancer. They might want to be an entrepreneur because once you're an entrepreneur, you definitely don't have a boss or a manager above you or a direct client that is telling you exactly what you need to do. That could be the case, I guess, for some entrepreneurs, but I think in many cases it's not, right? So that might appeal to some people. And the opposite can also be true. The idea of not having someone to give you orders and tell you what to do, that actually might not appeal to some people. Some people prefer to have a boss that gives them clear instructions and tells them what needs to be done and maybe even how to do the job. That actually appeals to a lot of people because not everyone is an entrepreneur or feels like an entrepreneur. Not everyone wants to be a freelancer, be independent. Actually, I think most people probably prefer to be an employee. That's why the vast majority of people have a job that they go to and they earn a salary from that job. That's because they actually choose that model, and maybe eventually they will have their own business or whatever. But the majority of people, at least in the US, don't have their own business, right? So many people actually prefer having the structure of a full-time job with a manager, a boss, answering to a boss isn't a bad thing. I know that some entrepreneurs and people that try to motivate other people to become entrepreneurs, they usually paint this image of bosses as being horrible people that you need to free yourself from. And of course, there are some bad bosses, obviously. But I don't like when entrepreneurs talk about being an employee as a bad thing, because it's not. That's just not the case. It's just a different model of working. And it's funny because a lot of these entrepreneurs who talk about how terrible it was for them when they were an employee, these entrepreneurs have employees that work under them. So I don't like that message that it's bad to have to answer to a boss. That's normal. It's normal to have authority in our lives. But of course, for some people, like for me, for example, I really like working independently. I work really well when I work on my own and create things on my own. I'm actually really efficient when I do that, and I think that I work well like this. So the idea of being an entrepreneur appeals to me. I actually like that. It's not just the fact that I don't have to answer to a boss, because, like I said, I don't think that's a bad thing. It's good to have structure and authority. And maybe in the future, I'll have employees that answer to me. I don't think so, but that might happen. Who knows? That's not a bad thing. But working by myself, independently, not needing to rely on other people, all of that appeals to me. So that's why I do this, right? So for people that do answer to a boss, of course, there are different types of consequences when you make mistakes. For me, I don't get in trouble with a boss if I don't work well or make a mistake, but an employee has to answer to a boss when they aren't responsible or they do something wrong. And a freelancer answers to their clients. So if they don't work well, they can also get in trouble, right? For me, I don't have that. For entrepreneurs, they don't necessarily have that direct consequence of someone yelling at them or whatever. But the consequence will be that their business will suffer if they're making mistakes and not doing things right. So the consequences are there. And sometimes they're much, much bigger when you're an entrepreneur. But you don't have a boss to answer to that will yell at you and scold you. When someone scolds you, this means that they tell you you're doing something wrong in a harsh way, right? They're trying to really show you that you're doing something bad or wrong. They're scolding you. So entrepreneurs don't get scolded by bosses, but the consequences of doing things wrong are still there, and they can be very negative consequences. So one other thing that appeals to some people, why they might want to be an entrepreneur, is the potential for growth, because you can grow. There aren't a lot of limits when you're an entrepreneur. And that appeals to a lot of people. You can definitely grow as an employee, for sure. Sometimes you grow faster as an employee. So that is also true. But some people might view this differently, like there's a ceiling that you have when you're an employee. We like to use the word ceiling in this way to talk about this limit that you have. So there might be a ceiling in your company or whatever, and maybe once you reach that ceiling, you go find another job with another company, or maybe at that point, it's time to be independent, and then you start your own business or something. So there are different avenues that you can take to grow in your career. But of course, entrepreneurs have an enormous potential for growth. If someone has a thriving business and they do things well, that business can really grow, right? But for other people, that potential for growth is not the biggest thing. That's not what appeals to them the most. Actually, for them, what appeals to them might be not having the pressure of owning your own business and not having the pressure of trying to grow a business. That's a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, a lot of risk. So for some people, not having to do that is very attractive. That appeals to them. So I completely understand that. That can definitely be someone's preference. Most people probably prefer that, actually. And then for a certain group of people, freelancing might appeal to them because it's kind of like the middle ground between being an employee and being an entrepreneur. Yes, you have to answer to clients, but you don't have to answer to a boss. So you have a little more freedom to do things the way you want to do them, start projects that you like and not be forced to do certain projects. So you have a decent amount of freedom there, but you still have some structure because the client works with you more directly with their demands. And so things might be more structured in that way. So people that want some freedom, they want to work on their own, but they don't want to start a business and do all that stuff. For them, being a freelancer, that idea might appeal to them. So that could be a good choice if that corresponds to your desires. So I hope that as I talked, you were able to hear these two phrasal verbs again and again, and now you feel more comfortable with them. I think that you heard them many times, so you can try to use them in your own speech. And I want to encourage you to use my advanced episodes so you can take your listening to the next level and start to understand fast English. So you can become a Listening Time family member to sign up for those. The link is down below. And you can sign up for my US Conversations podcast as well to practice listening to my conversations that I have with people from all over the country. It's a lot of fun and it's great practice for your listening. And I give you the transcript with the definitions of key words and phrases that we use. So those two things are the tools that will help you reach a high level of listening. So the links are down below. And thank you so much for listening to this phrasal verb episode, and I'll talk to you in the next one.